It'll do. All right, we should be live. Good evening, all. I hope you're excited because we get to talk about one of the factions you don't hear about winning very often, doing well at a tournament. Not just winning, but between two players going completely undefeated, which I think is pretty damn impressive. I'm joined by Pip. How are you doing this evening, Pip?
Great, thanks, Ed. Happy to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for coming on, by the way. You're currently in a hotel because you're traveling for work, so there's a real level of commitment there.
Yes, well, I think there's this is the best way to spend an evening in a hotel traveling for work. I think
All right,
chatting
that's
Warhammer.
that's fair enough. Yeah. There is a limited amount to do. I, as someone who's travelled for work, the first couple of times you do it, it's exciting, and then you get to a point where it's becomes a drudge more than anything else. But so we're here to talk about Lizardmen, and what we're going to do. In fact, I will start off. We've got some bits and pieces to talk about, some bits and pieces to look at. But while we chat, I will just put some pictures of your army on the on display so people can see what you're looking at. Because you've got a really nice classic Lizardmen list. You've got a lot of the old models. The Slann. When is that Slann from? Is that like a third edition Slann?
Fifth edition. So fifth edition was when pretty much all these miniatures came out because that was when they reimagined Lizardmen and launched the army as being called Lizardmen. Before that, there were Slann, but there weren't Saurus or Skinks.
Sure.
Um, and that was when the Slann got fat. Before that, the Slann were all quite svelte, and they
Yeah.
would kind of ride around on dinosaurs and have laser guns. But then after fifth edition, the Slann had a rest.
Interesting. That's a change. I'll have to go back and have a look at some of those medals. I know there was definitely a while in Warhammer Fantasy's history before they really found their footing and they got to the recognizable game that we got to today. But I'll have to have a look. I think the only thing that you're missing really is the goblin green rims on the bases. I feel like that would be the way to round
The,
it all
orig-
out.
the original paint jobs on those models would have had the goblin green, and also had most of the plastic skinks be buried in just a thick coat of enamel paint. But I came back into the hobby when I finished uni, and I repainted them, and I'd heard about brown bases by then.
There's the modern paint schemes. So when did you start off in Warhammer? Was it very much sort of getting into it as a kid and then going from there?
Absolutely, the standard story. I think my
Yeah.
uncle, when I was 9, saw the fifth edition starter box in the window of Games Workshop, and it had dinosaurs on it, and so he thought Pip will like that,
Yeah.
and Pip did like that, and it all sort of got worse from there. The addiction just deepened. Um, so yeah, I mean the miniatures that you show in those pictures, the plastic skinks are the plastic skinks I got in that starter box.
Mm.
Um, I now have 8,000 points of Lizardmen, um, including 100 Saurus Warriors, of which I'm currently using 0, and also some other stuff, but mainly Lizardmen,
Yeah.
because they were really the thing that stuck in my brain at that age. It doesn't go away.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I feel like with 8,000 points, you could probably run any list you wanted to. Is there anything that you haven't got enough duplicates of to fit in at 2,000
I
points?
I don't have Razordons. That is the only unit in the list that I don't have any of.
Mm.
Um, Fortunately, at the current state of old world, I don't desire Razordons. Um, but yeah, they never had a model that appealed to me. I do have 4 or 5 salamanders though, so
Okay.
we're not lacking for the hunting teams. Um, I think I have had a big army out a couple of times during eighth edition of Lizard Men. I've
Mm.
had 4 or 5 thousand points on the table. It'd be great to get that going sometime, but haven't done that with Old World yet.
Fair. Fair. Cool. Well, okay, let's start off then. Before we get into it, we will address what is the hot button topic of the month. Also, sorry, is that your Discord notification sound?
It's You can hear that blink blonk.
I can hear that blink
It's
blonk.
it seems to be something on the call connecting and disconnecting. I'm not sure why.
Oh, that's incredibly fun for all of us involved. Uh, I'm not sure if there's any way to turn that off. It might
I
just have
could
to be.
I could leave the call and rejoin.
Yeah, you know what? Let's give that a go if that's all right
Yeah.
with you.
So if you're willing to take 5 minutes, I can leave the calls in the browser for me right now. If I change my other partition, I can do it in the app. Maybe it'll
Sounds
behave
good.
better.
We'll
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
we'll reset in a second.
Okay. With you in 5.
Sure. Apologies for this all. Uh, I'm not gonna fix it, so you just get to see me looking Canadian on the as in South Park Canadian on the screen here. We've been on a Discord call for 30 minutes. We did a really good sound check. We put a lot of effort in because Pip was concerned with hotel Wi-Fi that we might have some issues. So of course none of these issues kicked in up until up until right before, just to make things nice and easy. So apologies for this, but we'll be back in a second, and hopefully just with a slightly better audio listening experience. Yeah, classic indeed. I love how good to see you all. By the way, hope you're all doing well. It's nice to be back. I feel like there are more comments about how demented I look with my face split between the two than there are or have been about the Lizardmen so far. Good old technology failing at a vital point. Absolutely. Hey, Leaf, how you doing? If you too could be on here if you come back to the TSN Arena and win 5 games with your 10 Warriors of Chaos units, that would be worth preaching to the masses about. So no pressure, but if you can find it in you to win 5 games, we'll have you on. Murphy's Law, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, just look at these. Look at that. That's actual effort put onto those Stegadons. I mean, I know he's had about 25 years to paint them, although I feel like most of them have been repainted in adult life as opposed to the original. Oops. There we go. And I'm back. Yes. You're good, but you don't deal in miracles. No worries, Leaf. No worries. The offer's there, though. The offer's there. Something that we probably will talk about at some point, or we might not get a chance to. You see here the Bastillodon. This is something that Pip has physically wired up himself, and there is a switch on the base, and this piece of rock salt has a bulb or an LED underneath or inside it, and you can turn it on to light up the bit on the back, which he does when he shoots with the Bastillodon, which is a good way of tracking, I guess, whether you've shot with them. Pip's army is amazing. Yeah, it's really lovely. It's really lovely. And I had the pleasure of playing it this weekend and losing to it. You know what? I'm just gonna say nice things about him while he's not here. Now, slight disclaimer on this: the first 2 times we played, I didn't know how to play Warhammer. It was in my 2 first tournaments, and he was one of my first tournament games. And if you go back to one of the first videos on the channel, you can say, "Oh, the calls. Oh no, even my face is gone now. Apologies." Well. Hopefully he'll call back in a second because you can just see the Discord stream here. But yeah, no, he's we're currently 3-0 in his favor at tournaments. So yeah, even with having played now when I've learned how to play the game, he's still beating me. He's a smart guy. He's a smart guy. I was quite enjoying looking at myself as the Canadian version of me. I wonder if I should just call him back and leave it running. We'll give that a go. Like so, here. There we go. We're back. We're so back. How's everyone doing? While we wait, I'll have to remember to come back and trim this bit out of the live stream when it allows me to. I think it takes something like 24 hours for you to be able to edit a live stream, but I should be able to fix that. Hey, how you doing, bud? We have a spinning wheel. Excellent. Perfect. Have you decided that the phone is the way to go?
The phone appears to be the way to go.
No worries. I had set the audio volumes from before, but thank you for coming back. I'll just make you a little bit louder here. Okay, so all of the audio checking I did was before, so if one of us is too loud or too quiet, please do let me know in the chat, but we can move on from here. Perfect. Well, you didn't miss much while we were gone. I told people about your fancy electrician Distilladons, where you've wired them up, and I've told people that you're 3-0 against me at tournaments, and I think that was basically it. Also, when you went, my face was split between the two windows and stream, so I looked like it was a Canadian from South Park. So I got some good mileage out of that. But we can probably move on to talking about the actual Lizardmen themselves.
Sounds good.
So, as I was saying before, the technology attacked. Why would Renegades do this to us? Hot button issue. This was a Renegades and Square-based comp event, so you were playing with 2,400 points, I think it is, for Renegade Lizardmen. Cool. And obviously you're playing with the Renegade rules, which, short version of what's different, I think your spells are a little bit easier to cast, and you've actually convinced me that Monsoon might not be a terrible spell, but we'll talk about that later on. You can put the Slann in a unit of Temple Guard, which is one of the main things. You don't have to take a unit of Saurus in core, and I think it unlinks Skink Priests and Saurus heroes as to like the restriction for how many they can take. Is there anything I'm missing, just as a general vibe there?
Cold-blooded. That's one of the big things.
Oh yes, and cold-blooded, which we will talk about in more detail because you sent me a graph, so we will we'll cover that one because that's an important one. So, very quickly then, the question that I have before we get onto it: do you think you can play Lizardmen at a competitive tournament outside of, not even square-based comp, but outside of Renegades?
I think they're a much shallower and less fun army to play. Obviously, you can play anything at a tournament, and if you're in the right mindset, which I think you've talked really well about in the past, Ed, about your expectations coming to a tournament, have fun.
Yeah.
I think Lizardmen without Renegades are a very generic and simple army with the legacy PDF, and they hit a ceiling pretty hard. You basically have one unique thing that you maybe do better than anyone else, which is Skinks. And then the rest of what you do is chuck monsters at people and be sad when they turn out to be worse than the others.
Yeah, and the throwing Skinks at people approach is fantastic, and it's a really good job that they take up such a significant part of your list, and then that they're not incredibly points cheap per model. So actually, that's only like you can only take 4 units of them. So how many points does that really take up? 250 at most, or something like that?
Yeah, I think look, 4 units of 15 Skinks is something like 320 points. And,
sure.
Yeah, and that's probably doing most of the lifting of a legacy Lizardman 2,000 point list, is those 320 points. And then you have 1680 points of the pretty dire stuff that is trying to ride its coattails.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so the conversation is going to be specifically about them in the context of Renegades, because that's kind of really the only way to make them interesting. So if that's not your cup of tea, you know to not listen. And we can go forwards with that as the context. So, talking Lizardmen, let's start off with, I guess, this weekend. I didn't ask you about this beforehand, so this is my bad. But are there any sort of key points over the weekend that you want to talk about before we get into like the list proper, or general points of strength in the army? Any key takeaways that you had from this weekend?
I think it's tempting to rabbit on, but I don't want to get into things that have no context.
Sure.
I would say thank you to everyone who came to TSN. It was such a lovely time coming back, and it's always a real pleasure to come and play a GT with a bunch of I think there were some things this weekend that were semi-new in my tinkering with the list. The lightning rod is one of them. That I think has really elevated how kind of powerful the army is to play. But I think they slot into the broader context of the list. So I don't know that they, without sort of thinking about the problems in context.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, let's go to the list design, because there were 2 Lizardmen lists at the TSN Arena this weekend. One of them was written by you, and one of them was written by me, copying what I knew that you put into the list. So I will take very little on that. The other person I just want to give a quick shout out was Craig, who went to the TSN. He hasn't been to very many events for Old World. He plays a lot of different games, so he was the fact that he went 3 and 2 draws was very impressive. So I'm gonna say that is 20% my coaching, 50% his playability, and 30% your list design. So I think that's a good segue into talking about your list design.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I think the version of my lists that you gave him was one inspired by a conversation with you when you said that one Carnosaur is quite good. Why don't you bring two? Back in 2024, I think. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, so the core engine of a Lizardman Renegade list that I've been kind of building around for the last, well, pretty much since Renegades came out, but particularly since around about January when I stopped experimenting with something slightly different, is you have your Slann and your Blocker Temple Guard. The Slann, I think, is absolutely essential once you unlock him as being playable in Renegades. Leadership 9 General, a level 4, things the army really can't do without. Temple Guard, I think there are ways to play without them, but I really like them. My favourite units that I painted up, and I think they are a very strong unit when you use them in conjunction with the Renegade Slann, keeping him safe inside the bunker. Skinks, 4 units of Skinks, the 320 points of heroes. Heroes in the Skinks are hero sense, not heroes game rule sense.
Yeah.
And then the question is what you do with the rest of the points. And for me, that's been dinosaurs, which seems like the obvious answer. So you have a choice there of sort of 3 workable dinosaurs, which is the Carnosaur, the Stegadon, and the Bastillodon. Carnosaurs are your kind of aggressive melee option. They're one of the only good ways to get Swift Stride into the army. And then your Stegadons and Bastillodons are kind of doubling down more on shooting as a strength of the army. Where the Bastillodons in particular, you take the solar engine, you've got a 24-inch range magic missile that's very punchy, kind of acts like a pseudo artillery piece. And Stegadons are more of a hybrid piece, which is kind of core to the identity of Lizardmen. I think they're a mobile, combined arms, hybrid shooting army. So Stegadons can feel a bit jack of all trades, master of none, but they also kind of play with the rest of the list, the way the rest of the list was originally dreamed up to play. And they are actually the oldest, in terms of game design, they're the oldest monster in the list. They were in it before Carnosaurs or Bastillodon.
Yeah.
So my list this weekend had 1 Carnosaur, 2 Stegadons, and 2 Bastillodons for a total of 5 monsters, which is, I think, mostly possible because of square-based comp.
Those extra points definitely go a long way.
And the general idea was it's a control army. You've got 4 bound magic missiles and maybe some other magic missiles that aren't bound, coming from the Skink Priest riding one of the Stegadons and the Slann himself. You've got a cloud of poison javelins. You've got skirmishers giving you board control everywhere.
Yeah.
Got the Slann and his casting giving you board control, and you are trying to control the approach of the opponent. And then whatever does get close to you, you've hopefully got in a position where between your Temple Guard block and your 5 dinosaurs, it's maybe going to have a bad time when it actually gets up close.
Yeah.
As opposed to a pure shooty list where, maybe your aim would be to run away at that point.
Yeah, because the first version that I saw you tinkering around with was the triple Bastillodon, which has more like obvious raw ranged power as opposed to the hybrid power of the Stegadon that you've talked about there.
Yeah, and that's something actually. So for a long time, I was on 3 Bastillodons. I think Robbie Susan, who I've not met but I've spoken to online, me onto them because he was doing out east in here, I think. And I had written them off because I looked at the unit on paper and I thought this is bad. And actually, it's one of those things that kind of scales non-linearly the more you have of it and to learn to use. I'm starting to swing back the other way because I'm kind of finding that the Bastillodons, because they're movement 4, they kind of nail you to your half of the board, and you end up playing this game of which Bastillodons will I sacrifice as decoys? Just
sure.
My army will leave them behind like the tide sort of receding from a stone, and I'll just let the have that, and I'll be somewhere else. Whereas with the Stegadons, you kind of be, well, when you get close to that Stegadon, I'm actually going to jump you and smash you, and the Stegadon will help with that. And the Stegadon can defend the Bastiladon, the Stegadon can defend the Temple Guard. Also, in terms of the magic missiles, the Bastiladon gives you a 3d3 strength 5 AP2 24-inch range magic missile. The Stegadon gives you a 2d6 strength 4 AP nothing magic missile, 15-inch range. Sometimes 2d6 strength 4 is what you want over 3d3 strength 5. Sometimes if you've got something that's not elite but has more body coming at you, the Stegadons will clear it faster.
That's interesting, because I'm thinking averages here. 3d3 is an average of 6, and 2d6 is obviously an average of 7. Now, while you can spike higher, it feels like with the difference in strength and AP, you're going to get mostly the same results out of that, even into the lighter targets. Do you find that just the potential to spike higher gives you a lot more ability to just accidentally get rid of that unit of peasant archers or something like that?
There is. So the ability to spike is definitely great. With the Solar Engine, you think I only rolled like 8 hits with the Solar Engine like once or twice. It's very consistent between 5 and 7.
Sure.
Also, the Engine of the Gods is power level 3 and cast on an 8. The Solar Engine is power level 2 and cast on a 9.
Yes.
So the Engine of the Gods, you've got to weight that average by how likely it is to go off. The Engine of the Gods is a fireball almost always cast, whereas the Solar Engine is something that is a slightly better than 50% chance to cast. So you really want to be chucking that Solar Engine at targets where it will make its money back, because you may get about 3 or 4 shots with it again. Whereas the Engine of the Gods, it's kind of like just a get out of my face button. And as well, the Engine of the Gods has 5 skinks in the Howdah, which is where that number of javelin shots starts to make it. So with the Bastiladon, it doesn't have the Howdah rule, so it can't fire sideways. It only has 3 skinks. So I think the chaff clearing power from the Stegadon is real.
As a side note, is it the only ridden monster, not ridden monster, but the only monster with crew that doesn't have Howdah? It feels like it might be.
Right, of course, time. For reasons best known to themselves, much like they did with several other rules, the old world writers decided to just lock Howdah to behemoths. It's in the text of the Howdah rule that it can only apply to behemoths, and the Bastiladon is not a behemoth. So I don't know what would happen if you actually put Howdah on a Bastiladon.
It sounds like the classic legacy rules contradiction that we see across the board, so we'll not worry about that too much, I guess.
It also has Initiative 1 and Strikes Last, which is
that drives me nuts. Necrosphinxes. This is an actual... Sorry, sidebar. Necrosphinx for Tomb Kings strikes last on their tail weapon. They're Initiative 1. This is an actual core army, so you'd figure that they'd get at least those small inconsistencies out by the time they went to print, but yeah. Whatever. You know what? If anything, those sorts of dumb things make the game more flavorful, because you're like, that's silly, and it sticks in your head.
Yeah. But yeah, I kind of think that both monsters have got a place, and the other thing that you really have to hand it to Stegadon for is that it's actually a fighter. So Stegadon is strength 4. It's got 3 attacks and 3 skinks, and it's got some impacts and stomps, but it's not a behemoth, so they have no AP.
Sure.
So Bastiladon, it can kind of, what I find is it can surprise the Dragon Ogre that comes to try and fight it by not dying, but it doesn't really surprise you by killing them.
Sure.
Whereas the Stegadon is a strength 6, toughness 6 behemoth. It's got D3 plus 2 stomps. It's got D3 plus 1 impact hits, which sadly don't have AP because legacy, but apart from that, it's pretty beefy. At the weekend, my ancient Stegadon, my Skink Priest and ancient Stegadon actually beat up a Walkfire Dragon, which was not a result I was expecting. But when you're a strength toughness 6 behemoth, that can happen. It's not out of the realms of the plausible.
You know what? It didn't beat up. It didn't beat up a Bale Taurus.
No.
It's high toughness and good armor saves are things that it definitely does seem to struggle with. But I guess because it's a weird thing where, and this is just a frustration that I have with how some monsters are not necessarily a legacy thing. the Engine of the Gods goes on the back on specifically the ancient Stegadons, which have higher strength, better weapon skill, but lower attacks. So you end up with this, you're paying more points for a unit that is better in some ways, worse in other ways, and they could have probably just made them better across the board. I think it's probably a holdover to how things were previously, but you see the same with Tree Men.
Yeah, it's this sort of kind of seesaw of stats. It's still straight up better because you get that strength 6 on your D3 plus 2 stomps.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little bit unnecessary. But yeah, I guess to bring the conversation back to the original question, that's been the core the list has been playing with. So you have these reasonably agile monsters, some of the movement 4, most of the movement 6, that take up not that much space. They lumber, they all fire magic missiles in a cloud of skinks with 1 brick of static res.
Yeah.
And a Carnosaur lurking to just ask that dragon or whatever that might come trying to push your Stegadons back, are you feeling lucky? Most of the times the dragon is going to win. Carnosaur can just provide that threat where they don't have a chance.
Yeah. Nice. And I think the Carnosaur is an interesting one to talk about as well, because obviously you've had some choice words about it over the weekend in terms of hopes and dreams that you have for it. And in fact, maybe this could be a public cry for help for Val if he does see it.
Yes.
How is the Carnosaur positioned as a mount specifically? Maybe in the terms of fighting monsters, where do you feel like it lands?
Yeah, I mean that very much that's its flaw, right? It is I think in at least one of the old Iron books they say that Carnosaurs are the reason that the dragons fled Lustria because the Carnosaurs kept eating.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you think, wow, strength 7, AP 3, multiple wounds D3, absolutely fine. So it's going to feel so good. Then you notice weapon skill 3. And this was never a problem for it in the past because in the past you would target the monster mount separately. And your dragon would be weapon skill 6, or your war sphinx would be weapon skill 3, and the Carnosaur would hit on 4s because that was the kind of weapon skill. I think the only monster mount in the game that had a weapon skill of 7 was the Star Dragon.
Yeah.
Now you hit the weapon skill of the Rider, and they all have weapon skill 7. Even the Bone Dragon, the Tomb King's going to My Will Be Done himself, be weapon skill 7. And so the Carnosaur hits on 5s, which with 4 attacks means he doesn't hit. So you are essentially just ablative wounds for the Saurus here on the back, bashing away with his great weapon. And occasionally you will spike and get a multi-wound.
Yeah, so for context for anyone who hasn't seen the Carnosaur, as pointed out, it's 4 attacks at weapon skill 3. So struggles to hit the weapon skill 7 laws that you quite often see riding ridden monsters. Strength 7, AP 3, D3 multiple wounds specifically for attacking monsters. So it's very clearly signposted at killing one thing and one thing only. And in fact, there's a downside to it. It's not just all upside. If you do a wound at all with the Carnosaur, it becomes frenzied. The worst sort of frenzy, which is the one where you don't get the attacks for it because you get it after you've rolled your dice, but then you have the limitation of on subsequent turns, or like if you win combat, you have to overrun. If you're out of combat, then you have to charge in subsequent turns. So there's a lot there that could be tweaked around with.
Yeah, I actually find. I mean, I loathe Blood Frenzy, but I find it very flavorful. I feel towards Blood Frenzy the way I feel probably a lot of Orc and Goblin players felt towards Animosity, which is this is killing me.
Yeah.
But does feel like this model has a personality, and I'm playing around that.
I want it to change, but I don't actually want it to change. I want to be able to complain about it and be like, that damned Blood Frenzy, but please don't take it away because it feels correct.
Yeah, it came in very relevant in our game, right? Where I had chucked my Carnosaur successfully through some stuff, and I was scheming and plotting about how I could run away from the train that was about to run it over. And oh no, wait, I'm frenzied.
Well, it came in, but even before that point, when I had successfully set up an overrun, making you go specifically into another target, and then having realized before even the end of that combat phase that I had miscalculated sequencing. So I sent you into another juicy target, this one only weapon skill 6 that you were able to hit, and I went, oh wait, hold on, I've sequenced this really poorly, I don't get to charge in and get the steam tank impact hits. But I'll talk about that more in my battle report for the mistakes that I made. That's
one of the few times it actually gets to get that extra attack from the frenzy now.
Yep, yeah. And I think it didn't take too long to get through the that character. It dropped it to a wound or so, but yeah, I took some pictures and I'll go through that later. But yeah, so the Carnosaur, is that the reason that you don't run two of them? The limitation of the weapon skill and the blood frenzy?
No, I still like Carnosaurs, and I think it's just a question of balancing what you want your list to be doing.
Sure.
I think the Carnosaur, having two Carnosaurs is really nice in that when you're playing that game of do you want to take a chance, you can defend more space with them, and you can have a backup when someone calls your bluff and that Carnosaur does lose. You can then say, well, you took a few wounds in that fight. How do you feel about Carnosaur fight number 2? Or you can go off and threaten somewhere else. Carnosaurs are also pretty good at fighting rank and file units, particularly in the era of the Monster Hunter Tapestry, because they don't depend on stomps. They only have 2 stomps, but they have a decent quantity of just good strength 7 attacks. So I think Carnosaurs are nice in pairs, but I think a pair of Carnosaurs is a big investment in melee for an army that is really trying to play control and shooting. And I've been finding that having in SBC specifically, where I can afford it, having the Skink character on it, the Skink Priest on the Stegadon, it's just giving me kind of more flexibility and control. I'm getting out maybe a couple of monsoons rather than one. I'm able to kind of throw the weight of the 2 Stegadons around as a pair and then more than their parts. While the one Carnosaur is still giving me that kind of dragon patrol, like still doing enough of the job that I need to do while the rest of the army plays more defensively.
Yeah, that does make sense. The other thing that really sort of I hadn't considered before the weekend, which is why I didn't put it in Craig's list, and you very quickly talked me round on, is if we go back to the Slann, who, if we look at the legacy rules for the Slann is not a particularly interesting, compelling caster to level nations and to, really a child of the Star Gods. But in the Renegades PDF, you've got enough stacked on top of there where you've got the the 5th spell already, so you don't necessarily need to go for a lore familiar. You've got the reroll a single die per turn built in, so you've got a lot more consistency. There's a magic item that you put on your Slann that I think is very interesting. Do you want to talk about the decision to put Wand of Jet on there?
Yes, so Wand of Jet is an item that's a bit of a dud in the core rulebook. As a generic item, because it's you get +1 to cast and dispel, very strong, until you roll a double, which is a 1/6 chance. So if you assume that you're casting maybe 3 spells a turn and dispelling maybe 1 or 2 spells a turn, then you're going to break it.
Yeah.
But the Slann, he can, as you say, with Renegades, he can reroll 1 casting die per turn. And he also has an upgrade he can buy, which is in the Legacy PDF, called Becalming Cogitation, which is probably the best of his grades that he can buy, although it's expensive at 50 points. It's +3 inch dispel range and reroll 1 dispel dice per turn. And that's per turn, not per round. So you can reroll 1 remains in play in your turn, and then again in the opponent's turn, you can have that reroll back. So that means that you can save that reroll for when you roll doubles, and you can massively reduce the odds that the Wand of Jet breaks itself. I have repeatedly re-rolled a double into a double,
Of course,
and
that's how it goes.
But still, probabilistically it's really big. And then getting that +1 to cast and dispel, and stacking it with the Engine of the Gods, which is a 6-inch aura, +1 to cast from your Engine of the Gods Stegadons. You get to a +4 to cast. So you end up being a very reliable caster, hard to dispel. And as well with a 27-inch dispel bubble at +3 with a reroll, you can become really problematic for armies that are banking on magic. And particularly undead Actually, I found that Renegade Lizardmen with that combination on the Slann, vampire counts, they try and debuff your leadership, and you say no, and then they say, well, take a leadership test anyway, and you say cool, and you take no damage, and you carry it.
I think you've expertly moved us in the direction of maybe talking about Cold-Blooded, which we can seg on to in a second. But I do want to say, playing against that +4 to cast felt so rough. Not in terms of like, oh, Lizardmen are a problem. We got to start banning Lizardmen. It was giving me Wild Herd flashbacks for sure. But you just get your spells off very consistently, as you say, but also enemy dispels. You're already at a disadvantage if you're dispelling just on a flat like +2 on the dice +2 because you've got to roll higher than your opponent. When your opponent's got +4 and you're only sat there with a +2 to dispel, it's really difficult to get anything stopped. So I found that in our game, all the spells that you wanted to cast, you got off. I don't think there was anything particularly meaningful that I managed to stop. Maybe there was one spell in there that I managed to cast that I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's very, very consistent.
I think that's a really interesting area for the design because my opinion, which of course is very biased, is I think that's how the Slann should feel, and I think that the core design of Lizardman has always been, the Slann is this supreme wizard, but there can only be one of him, and he's in one defined place, and outside the Slann, you can't spam out more level 3s like other armies can. You can only have level 1s and 2s, and they're little toughness 2 guys scurrying around. So it's like you eggs in one basket in terms of magic.
Yeah,
that basket's pretty good. I'm very interested to see what direction Val goes in with Renegades 2 for the Slann, because I feel I don't love that getting to that power is coming from a kind of weird interaction with a rulebook item.
Sure.
I don't know if that was foreseen. It takes a lot of explaining. This reroll, I have that reroll, I have this item. But it does feel like it's a proper Slann again.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and in terms of, you say it takes some explaining, I think the way you do it is good. You've got 3 cards, and you've got, here's my Becalming Cogitation reroll, here's my other reroll, here's the Wand of Jet +1. So if it's used, or if I'm not using the Wand of Jet, I'll just flip them over and tell you. And that is a good way to keep track, and it makes it very clear. But as you point out, you pointed out over the weekend, it's almost 500 points for the wizard.
Yes,
you are paying for what you get, for sure.
Yeah, he is an instant lose button if he dies, because if he dies, he gives up 150 points of bonuses as well.
General and ASP.
Yeah, and of course, if he dies, that also meant that. But unless, of course, well, sometimes he blows the Temple Guard up, and then he might die on his own. But that's another problem.
He's one of the few wizards in the game that when you roll a miscast, you go, oh, this could actually be really bad. Because normally a miscast, you're like, oh no, I take a wound. Or, well, my spell goes off, but since I only cast 3 spells, that's fine. There's very few armies I find that really worry. There's Wild Herd, and then there's Lizardmen, who have a Slann in the middle of some very expensive models who are very vulnerable to a 5-inch blast template of strength 10 AP4 that can just wipe out the entirety of the unit. I do want to talk about the Temple Gun as well, but before we go any further, let's talk about the graph that you sent me, because it's a good example of the strength that you get from Cold-Blooded.
Yeah, so Cold-Blooded is a rule that goes back, like I was saying earlier, that the inception of Lizardmen as an army in 5th edition. They come in with this rule, and it never changed until the Old World Legacy PDF, for their own reasons, decided that they should rein it in. And it is extremely strong. So the effect of Cold-Blooded is very similar to the effect of just having a reroll. It's slightly worse when the leadership you're rolling against is high, and it's slightly better when the leadership you're rolling against is low. And you can easily picture why that is, right? If you've got a high leadership, you're only going to fail on 2 high numbers. Cold-Blooded will only allow you to reroll one of those 2 high numbers, where a full reroll will only roll both. If you're on a low leadership, then rolling one low number you can re-roll the other one and get down to that low number you need. So you can kind of just look at it in terms of like equivalent leadership. So Coldblood is in the middle of the gradient. It's kind of like a +2 leadership. So Skinks being leadership 5 are actually more like leadership 7. Saurus being leadership 8 more like leadership 9 or 10. Slann's kind of a leadership 10.5. But then you can also stack it with the effect of a BSB, and that's when Lizardmen, going all the way back through the previous issues of Warhammer, when the feeling of Lizardmen being one of the armies with the best leadership in the game comes from, because if you're in the BSB bubble, they're just not going anywhere. Even leadership 5 Skinks. I mean, your BSB bubble is also a general bubble, so it's going to be leadership 9 cold-blooded re-rolling. Your odds of passing get really high really quick.
Yes. Yeah. And consistency is fantastic, because something that is shown really nicely here, Skinks are an incredible unit, but one of the few downsides they have is their low leadership. You know, they're surprisingly resilient for the points cost, especially now that parry is a thing, so even in combat with that 4-up armor save, one of the few avenues you can really get them on is leadership. But the fact that they've got cold-blooded, it takes them up to, what did you say, it was roughly 50%. It's almost like their leadership 7 equivalent. Yeah. In terms of, so it's you get a lot more out of your cheaper units, especially. Yeah,
and what I find is you've punched up in losing combats.
Yeah,
expectedly. I had a lot of experience in older editions where people would kind of be, I would see it in their eyes that they were kind of like gloating about good combat they'd set up, and I would know, yeah, that's fine because I'm going to pass my break test.
But maybe not just pass the break test. It maybe give ground when you would not expect to give ground, or
exactly.
And that's paired as well with there's like a surprising amount of stubborn in the list as well. Like the Stegadons are stubborn, the Temple Guard are stubborn as well, I believe, if that's correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, getting the Lizardmen to break is difficult. So something that I find interesting about Lizardmen, it's one of the armies that's maybe on my list to play because it has a lot of aspects I find interesting from Chaos Dwarves that I'm playing at the moment, where your positioning is so key and how you support your static units is really important. But you've got the consistency where you know that if someone comes in, it's almost impossible for them to wipe because you've got like just stats, you know, your T4, you've got 3-up saves or whatever it is that you've leaned into. Maybe you've got earthen ramparts as well. But you know you're going to stubborn, or you might even win because you've got a lot of static combat res in that brick. So I think that's a really interesting play style, which is honestly not something we see in the game at all. We've got a lot of like very fast power, but we don't see many armies that play around a durable core that you can then bring units into support. And I think that's a very interesting and tactical play style.
I think you're going into a lot of people's book of grudges with that comment, but apart from dwarves, I agree.
I may have forgotten that the dwarves existed, but if we're being realistic, you don't see many dwarf lists that actually play like that. You kind of just see dwarves that go, here's lots of flying whirlamagigs and maybe a couple of guns as well.
I'm seeing a lot of bricks of 30 dwarfs behind a sort of trench.
Okay, lately. So those are dwarves with guns backed up by flying whirlamagigs. So
yeah,
your point is not wrong. But
it's the trench comes first, the helicopter comes second.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But no, consistency is definitely something Lizardmen do pretty well, I think, and it is really something where I think Renegades, it was an easy change, but it brings the flavor of the army back so much, being this kind of like they're relentless, they're committed to the great plan, they're going to do what the Slann says, sort of not individualistic, and the Legacy PDF, actually I would say they're one of the worst leadership in the game.
Yes.
Because you cannot bring your Slann, and the Saurus here, and all the leadership values in the roster are calibrated to being cold-blooded. So your combat lord is leadership 8, which is the same as sort of the cowardly sniveling sorcerer for a chaos army, but that lord who has lived for 1,000 years and like fought demons at the dawn of the world is leadership 8 because it's leadership 8 cold-blooded.
Yeah.
That's a rant and a digression.
Just to, in case maybe I missed it. What's the difference then between Legacy and Renegades? Obviously, in Renegades you get to use cold-blooded for everything, but in Legacy it's very specific things you get to use cold-blooded for.
In Legacy, it is specifically fear, terror, and panic, and that's it.
Yeah.
So you can't break tests, and that actually really leans into the strengths of skinks over the strengths of everything else, because
Sure.
those are the tests that skinks take. Skinks take panic tests.
Yes,
Saurus
they
take
do.
break tests. If a skink is taking a break test, something may have gone wrong.
Yes.
Or you may be throwing skinks at people to annoy them. That's also true. But in terms of which tests are essential, skinks care about panic tests.
Sure.
Saurus care about break tests.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for the graph that you said you may have actually done in a previous edition. I think you said this was something that you'd put together in 8th edition. So it's if anything, just nice for the Renegades update to allow us to use maths that we've done previously. Because at the end of the day, what are we if we're not, nerds who enjoy thinking about our armies a bit too much, maybe? Perfect. Sorry, did you have something there?
No, nothing.
I've realised something that I probably should have done at the start of the video or the stream, and I didn't, is I've called you the most successful Lizardman player in the world. And I feel like I should, before people maybe look to question me, contextualise that. I had a look. I think there are 2 people in the world who have won a GT with Lizardman. I think you might be the second one. But I think you're the only person who's also won 3 events in total with Lizardman. So I think that does put you up there as number 1. And for the other Lizardman players who are having actual success with them, no hard feelings, just win more events. And then you can too be a very successful Lizard player.
I want to meet the other person who's won a GT with Lizardman, or at least talk to them. Hit you up for the name after the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's not like a name and shame. I think I did close it down. I just looked on Old World rankings and had a quick look to see who it was, and I found one other person who had a 5-0 event. Their scores weren't inputted into the actual thing. It's like everyone at the event was marked as having 5 draws, but it seemed like something that had been manually input, but the actual position they were in was correct. So I'll send you that one later on, mostly just because I don't have it open, so I can't remember exactly who it was. Perfect. All right, sweet. Well, in terms of other things, I think an interesting conversation to have is the spell lore, because you played with Elementalism. I think that's probably like the go-to. It's the very obvious spell lore to go for. The spell lore that I'd put my friend on, which we'll probably have to change because Wand of Jet is so objectively strong. It's really, really good. What you can do with it now that I've seen it in play, it feels such like a point of power to play around. I had put Craig on 4 spells in Battle Magic and then 1 spell in Illusion, with the goal of rolling, trying to get Oaken Shield, but then also getting Glittering Robes, and just having consistent defense so that you could use the brick in the center of the board more as a bully piece, whereas you've gone for a smaller unit because you were talking about wanting to fit other pieces in. So I guess the conversation comes in, what spell lore do you like for the Slann, but then also the size of the Temple Guard ties pretty hand in hand with that.
But I'd quite like to play around with battle like you had Craig on, because I feel like Arcane Urgency in particular maybe gives you something that you can't get from any other spell lore, which is the ability to be aggressive with your slow pieces.
Sure.
And also Fireball is great. More magic missile.
Yeah, you've only got a couple of fireballs in the list, so why not an additional fireball? Get some more value there.
I think, more fireballs, more better. The 2 spell lores I've been playing around with most are Elementalism and High Magic. High Magic, if you do the Wand of Jet thing, you can hit those high casting values very reliably. And Warp Between Worlds is pretty crazy on Temple Guard. You just have an ethereal unit Temple Guard. Sometimes that's not as good as Earthen Ramparts in terms of defending them.
Yeah. Against some armies it's incredible, and against some armies it's completely useless.
Yeah, although very few where it's completely useless. Like if you're against Chaos, knocking them down to their hand weapons when you're a 3-up armor save unit is fine.
Yeah.
Dragon Ogres come in, they're just going to bounce. It doesn't matter if they're actually able to hurt you, they're using the wrong weapon. The Warpfire Dragon is the main thing that gives you and Bretonians with from every which way.
Yeah.
But although it fails in some matchups harder, it wins in other matchups harder. So, for example, I played a game against Jack Allen's Gunline where I basically just put the Temple Guard into Line Hammer and ethereal them and march them forwards, like where you can't see anything behind them and you can't hurt them,
Yep.
and they're coming for you. And the other thing in High Magic that really works for Lizardmen is Fury of Cain, which, begrudging that it's got an elf name, should be Fury of Sotek. That's besides the point.
Sure.
But yeah, so Fury of Cain, and specifically Fury of Cain on either Stegadon, which has 5 skinks in the Howder, and you can have 10 skink attacks. More realistically, Cold One Riders, where you have really dense attacks coming out of that unit. Period. I was playing around a lot with that before the new year. I was doing a drilled unit of Cold One Riders, often with a little Scar Veteran on a Cold One in there.
Yep.
And a High Magic Slann, making his unit ethereal, and then boosting the Cold One Riders. If you get that spell off, what they're really good at is blending through undead.
Yeah.
Not great at Graveguard because they don't have the greatest AP, but the Totem of Wrath has helped there.
Okay.
But they will just make an arbitrarily large unit of zombies or skeletons disappear, or Boshabti, or whatever.
Sure.
And they present a slightly different threat profile to a dinosaur. So the things that really punish your dinosaurs, like cannons and Boshabti, don't necessarily stop the Cold One dart before it arrives. And then when it arrives, even if it's quite beat up, you cast that spell and it hits like a full unit of normal cavalry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was the main meme unit from the start of the edition that people brought up, and you'd have a chuckle about, and you'd be like, oh, we'll also give them the banner that gives them frenzy as well, and give them as many attacks as possible. So it's really interesting to hear you say, actually, no, there's maybe an angle where you can go for the unit of Cold Ones that's also got all of the output. Maybe not the frenzy banner, but I guess just to talk about the Cold Ones and why maybe that they are playable. Do you find that specifically having access to the 3d6 for stupidity makes them feel like they work on the table, as opposed to when in Legacy they were just not?
That's critical, yeah. So stupidity is a terrible rule, but with Cold-Blooded, your leadership's really reliable. Back in 8th edition, characters on Cold Ones were ubiquitous. That was the optimal. There was lots of lone characters on Cold Ones, and they would all be taking stupidity tests, and you would fail the occasional stupidity test, and it would suck, but it was worth it because it's reasonably reliable. Efficient. Cold One Riders and Oldwood are efficient. They're very expensive. I think they cost about as much as Grail Knights. So when I say I was playing around with this, I have moved away from it.
Sure.
But I think there's still play there. You just have to not get dollar signs in your eyes and go down the route of, well, I could layer more attacks on this unit if I take more stupid. 6 attacks per base is plenty. That's
quite a few.
Yeah. And also I think the thing that I was really enjoying with them is the access to drilled. It's the Lizardmen. If you think of like a histogram of speeds in most armies, right? In most armies, you've got a big lump around movement 4, a big lump around movement 8, and maybe a little peak at like movement 10 for some flyers.
Sure.
Well, with Lizardmen, almost everything is in the movement 6 to 7 bell curve. You've got some movement 4 infantry, but only 2 units there.
Yeah.
And everything else movement 6 to 7, and nothing. You've got a couple of flyers, but they're very light. So you've kind of got this very one-speed army. Drilled, going 21 inches in a turn, lets you put that kind of pressure up the field that the rest of your army is going to be slower to apply.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was enjoying High Magic for that, but High Magic does have some problems. If you're not taking Lore Familiar, not rolling Walk Between Worlds is much more devastating than not rolling your Elementalism spell of choice.
Yeah.
Because that's the engine. The Fury of Cain's a party trick, but the Walk Between Worlds is the engine. And also, the cold ones, while they're really fun and they do a good job in quite a lot of matchups, they're also really expensive and they're basically a ball boy in terms of defense. So they can get shot down really quick.
Sure.
Whereas if you go Elementalism, you're kind of playing into the strengths of the stuff that is the most straightforwardly good. Plague of Rust is fantastic with Skinks, it's fantastic with missiles. Earthen Ramparts defends the Temple Guard just fine. TMP helps you move those slow dinosaurs around, helps you move the Temple Guard around. Wind Blast is a great magic missile.
Sure.
So if you're in that 5-spell regime where you will not have one useful spell, probably you're guaranteed 3 useful spells.
Yeah.
So I've been more on Elementalism recently with the sort of dinosaur heavy style of play.
Sure. That makes sense. And you know, TMP especially is such a frustrating spell to play against, because there's so much crap on the board when you're playing against the Lizardmen player. With, you know, there's just a Stegadon I can throw away, or there's 4 units of Skinks I can throw away. There's a lot of stuff to buy space, but then also when you finally get through that, and also the Arch Lightning Rod, which you use to make it so the flyers can't get there. When you're in a position where you think you finally managed to trap something, if your opponent casts TMP, suddenly that brick just doesn't go anywhere. And I think when you were playing against me, I don't think I managed to dispel it. I think you might have miscast or something on the TMP. There was some reason that it didn't go off. I can't remember the specifics of it.
First couple of turns, at least, of our game, I'd managed to put myself in a position where I couldn't reach. It was a piece of impartible terrain. My Temple Guard couldn't fit over it fully within 12 inches, and I was kind of desperately sort of side shuffling, trying to get myself into a TMP-able position.
Yeah.
I think in the end, the Slann ended up pulling the ejector seat and leaving the Temple Guard to fend for themselves. And they did fine without him.
Yes, I didn't manage to get them down to 25%.
Close run thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not that. But yeah, TMP is really nice. I think if you're playing that sheety style, you're usually thinking 1 or 2 turns ahead of where am I going to kind of rotate my army away to? Where am I going to buy more space? Because it's not a static gun line. It's a army that wants to try and shoot at the opponent from within about 12 or 15 inches. So you want to be maximizing the time where the opponent's quite close to you but not close enough.
Yeah. No, that does make sense. That makes sense. Cool. And then number of Temple Guard. You were talking about, so obviously the list that Craig was playing had a lot more Temple Guard in, and we talked about this a little bit, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts again on the size of the Temple Guard. If you wanted to play more aggressive with them, what sort of unit size would you go for?
So my unit of 16 Temple Guard was definitely skimping.
Yeah.
It was to pay for other things, and I knew I was being greedy, and I was punished for it in 1 or 2 games, including ours. I think I was almost punished for it in ours. I was sweating and watching the numbers go down.
Sure.
I think a unit of 20 like Craig was running is a nice safe number, as safe as you can be. I think I remember asking Richie early in the 1.0 changes, like how many 3-up safe or toughness 4 models would you take to be safe? He said like 30.
Yeah.
16 points each.
Yeah.
I think the problem to be aggressive with them is how are you going to deliver them?
Sure.
Because Arcane Urgency, you can march them 16 inches. On a regular board, that still leaves you 8 inches away from the opponent, which is not an infantry charge you want to try and make with a movement 4 unit.
Yeah.
I think any opponent who's really doesn't want to give a movement 4 infantry block a charge in Old World, it's really trivially easy to do. You don't necessarily even have to back away from them. You just have to make them wheel at an awkward angle or go through a vortex or something. They're just going to stand there. I had an experience with good friend Will, who's been to any of the same events as the 2 of us. Right after Gates came, I think we both had an infantry block. I had my Temple Guard. He had a Witch Elf block, staring each other down, and the Witch Elves declared charge, and they failed charge. And the Temple Guard declared charge, and they failed charge. And the Witch Elves declared charge, and they failed charge. And we stood there like that. Oh, sorry.
That was them tripping over their feet to make it in.
Yeah, they're exactly like that. And yeah, so I think deploying infantry aggressively in our world, you need a good conveyance spell, and by that I really mean Sea Shadows.
Yeah.
You need to get right up in the opponent's face and say, "Charge me, or else." Arcane Urgency, maybe you do that if you manage to march up an inch from their face, but it's not the same as Sea Shadows. It's a 16-inch move on the ground, and as a Skink player, I'm very aware that any kind of conveyance that moves on the ground is liable to be blocked by chaff on the ground. So that's what stopped me from trying to build an aggressive Temple Guard Death Star. I would love to put Saurus characters into my Temple Guard and make it bigger and chuck them at people, but I just feel I would be playing Benny Hill.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Well, I think we've covered all of the really exciting thoughts I had about Lizardmen, but obviously there's a huge amount of things in there. We've covered, even the I thought maybe just a meme of Cold Ones, and whether you're able to take those. I guess Totem of Wrath does open up the board to a lot of things. But are there any other units that you feel like have particular play that you could maybe squeeze them in, or is that kind of really plumbing the depths of things that might just not be playable at all?
There are a few units around the edges that I often think about. I think now I was really sticking to small permutations of one list because I felt it was going somewhere, and now that it's won an event, I might try a few more experiments with it. One that I kind of want to try out, particularly in SBC, is Pterodons.
Sure.
Pterodons are reasonably cheap. They are 32 points a model for a 2-wound flyer.
Mm-hmm.
That is not terrible. They do nothing. They have one skink on the back who is a skink, a normal skink javelin, and the Pterodon is a big bird with 1 strength weapon skill 3, strength 4 attack.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I was saying earlier, the army lacks access to Swift Stride. So having in that massive cloud of skirmishers that are in the places your opponent doesn't want them to be, having Fly 10's Swift Stride skirmishers there, maybe with unit champions, seems pretty good. The drop rock attack is really good. Once per game, the unit can be useful by bombing something, and it goes in the movement phase, so you can bomb lone characters. You can clear out the stuff that might be threatening your skinks. And the last thing, which is where I really wish they were a bit better, and what I want to use them for, is to hunt cannons.
Yeah,
because cannons just ruin your day as a Lizardman player. Cannons will pick off all those useful dinosaurs that you've got, and there's not much you can do about it. Even your big solar engine wounds a cannon on 6. Cannons universally cost less than your dinosaurs, so even if you can take them out, it's a negative trade. You're not fast enough to threaten them, take them offline quickly. And since the poison change, the number one solution to artillery for Lizardmen used to be just run up and poison them. But now it takes too long. Sure. You need several rounds of shooting to take a cannon down. And javelin range is also grape shot range. So skinks being toughness 2 just disappear if they run into grape shot.
Yeah, they're really leaning on that whole skirmish ballistic skill. One model be out of line of sight, the -1 to hit for being skirmish. You're hitting me on 5s or 6s at best.
Artillery dice, automatic hits, goodbye. And then 50% chance to fail that panic test because you're almost certainly far away from the slam when you do that. The reason I keep coming back to what if I use Pterodons is, well, I could get onto those cannons, but the problem is that they can lose combat to the crew. 1 skink attack and 1 big bird attack on a 40mm base does not give you a lot of volume.
Not
if
that
you're
much.
particularly against a toughness 4 dwarf cannon crew or a Cathay cannon crew with an ogre in it, you are really pushing it, attacking with that unit.
Mm.
Maybe the best you hope for is that you'll draw and at least hold it in combat. Obviously, you'd like to use Ripidactyls for that, but unfortunately, Ripidactyls are impetuous, so I kind of look at them as a bomb that's waiting to lose you a game by being uncharged. The other thing that I've used in that role is Saurus characters on flying carpets.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that as a choice as a unit because it hides in the skink cloud.
Sure.
And it's untargetable. It's got good leadership. It will smash a lot of stuff. The Saurus hero on a flying carpet is about 136 points, and he will come into anything you like with 5 weapon skill 5, strength 7, AP 2 attacks. So that unit of cavalry that was going to try and clear his skinks out just gets bodied by the Saurus hero.
Sure.
He's a bit fragile. He's only got 2 wounds, but he is toughness 5. The only reason he wasn't with me this weekend was just character points. He's competing for character points, and a big Stegadon character and a big Carnosaur character and a big Slann fill up character points completely.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think he's a very useful tech piece, I guess you'd say, for Lizardmen. Is that's the most reliable sort of backfield cannon hunter, wizard hunter, skink protector unit you can get is the Saurus Scar Veteran.
That's interesting because it ends up being quite expensive, I guess, right? Because you're paying, was it 90 points base, great weapon, charm shield for 99, and then flying carpet for 40, so about 150 points, give or take. Is that what it comes in as?
130 something.
Okay.
Something.
Is the Saurus character less expensive than I'm thinking? I thought it was 90 points.
He is 90, I think, but 90 plus 40 is 130, and then the.
Yeah, I was 10 points off because I think it'd be 139 if you gave him a great weapon and a charm shield. Yeah, I guess it's not that expensive, and
it's not cheap.
No,
sure.
No, it's been a hot second since I've looked at flying carpet. It gives you Swift Stride as well, isn't it? Fly 8 Swift Stride, I think. Yeah,
Fly 8 Swift Stride.
I'll have to give that one a go. That is an interesting idea. The fact that they have so many attacks, I think, is really interesting. They compensate for it by having worse weapon skill, but just five attacks with your Furious Charge on a hero level character is a real amount of punch you don't get elsewhere.
Yeah, no, he really lays it on. You can also use skink characters on Pterodons if you want something slightly cheaper. Obviously, they are going to be targetable.
Sure,
is the problem because you're really not going to get lone character protection from cavalry efficiently in Lizardmen army.
True.
Incredibly expensive cold ones who aren't keeping pace with the flyer.
Yeah. Or
a unit of 5 Pterodons, which is starting to get a bit silly in terms of this is meant to be a cheap, inexpensive unit. But a skink chief on a Pterodon is like 84 points with just a cavalry spear and a charm shield, I think.
That is pretty
and
cheap.
he will beat a cavalry, an artillery crew.
Yeah.
Because the rider is giving you the damage there that you should win. He's also upgrading the defense of the piece. So again, if you have the character points spare, that's another piece you can put in to try and deal with artillery.
Yeah, I guess the downside is as well, aside from being shootable, because it's not such a it's not a huge deal into every army. Not everyone has that much shooting, but into cavalry you can then get countercharged, which is a big downside for it.
Areas against Bretonnians. You're just inside the skink cloud and you can charge things and they're like countercharge you. No.
Yeah.
Sorry, not allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Just very quickly, thank you for the resub there, Callum. Just giving Lewis some shit, which we're always a big fan of. But thank you as well, Jack, who says, great victory, Pip. Such a crying shame I wasn't able to gun down any dinosaurs at the weekend. Until next time, revenge needed on Ed too. Our mutual friend, Jack Allen there, who we did have a conversation about, who the armies he plays typically are quite difficult for you to deal with as a Lizardman player. And I was saying, actually, the armies that Jack plays are quite difficult for him to deal with me. So we've got this nice triangle where I haven't beaten you, Jack hasn't beaten me for a while, and then Jack normally wins into you. So we could play a round robin and come out 2-1, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear Jack's from Renegade Crowns these days. I reckon with 2 cannons, Jack, you're going down.
That's the challenge that I like to see. You'll just have to come to the next one. Have you got any more tournaments on the horizon that he can come and try and beat you at?
TSN, I haven't figured out when it's going to come to. I'm hoping sometime in the summer.
Sure. Nice.
But, yeah, looking forward to my next game. They're always great.
Yes, yeah. Just incredibly sweaty in the most positive way. It's always a chess-like game playing against Jack.
Well, and I enjoy watching Jack's chess brain break down because everything is gummed up with 5,000 skinks.
I'd quite like to see that as well.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think we've covered all of the vague thoughts that I had that I wanted to touch on. But are there any things that you think are really exciting for Lizardmen that we haven't talked about that you want to cover as well?
Obviously, I'm vibrating with excitement for Lizardmen Renegades 2.0. I do not know what will be in that, but I'm encouraged by seeing the drafts that have come so far. I feel like this is going to add more of that depth and flavour that's been missing from old games. I am really excited to see other people playing Lizardmen doing well. It was really nice meeting Craig. I want to find out who this person is that you found who's won a GT with them. That's really
Apparently,
great.
there's two people who've won GTs with them. There's someone in Sweden and someone in America, I think it was. Australia, sorry, not America.
Oh, right. But yeah, it's just a great time to be a lizard. And I hope if anyone's thinking about Lizardmen as an army, then they won't be discouraged by any outdated doom and gloom they might find online for 2024.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you, and hopefully we'll see you again because you've won more events with maybe with the new Lizardmen. Maybe, depending on once we've the dust has had time to settle and you've had time to get some practice in with it, maybe it'd be good to have you back to talk about the Renegades' upcoming changes when they've settled in.
That'll be a pleasure.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you all, and I will see you later in the week.